Everything You Always Wanted to Know About God, But Were Afraid to Ask, the Jesus edition. Eric Metaxas, the best-selling author, New York Times best-selling author, is the author of this book. And I was looking at the back, Eric. You've got some very impressive endorsements here, including Chuck Colson and George Gallup Jr. Do you know George Gallup Jr.?
I certainly do.
He's quite the guy, I hear. He's a believer, right?
Very much so. He's Princeton graduate. Yeah, he's a pretty amazing guy.
Yeah. And these fellas, and women too, Ann B. Davis, Alice of the Brady Bunch.
That's true. But these are not made up. I try to get impressive
these are real
blurbs.
people.
Alice of the Brady Bunch, Ann B. Davis is a beloved actress and a serious Christian and just a delightful person.
Yeah. Now this is number 3. By the way, welcome. I didn't welcome you yet.
Didn't you?
No, I didn't welcome you. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here. It's my first time, and I'm really thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm looking forward to our next interview where we talk about your marvelous biography of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. But this book is the 3rd in a series.
Yes.
Of Everything You Want to Know About God.
It's called a trilogy.
Oh.
That's how you know there are 3. And that's how you know there's not going to be a 4th.
You're a really serious author when you can actually write a trilogy.
Yes. I said...
You join the ranks of C.S. Lewis,
right,
J.R.
yes.
Tolkien.
Yes, this is my trilogy, he said, with appropriate gravitas. This is my trilogy.
Yeah.
Now, actually, the first book, I really came to faith around, I guess it was 1988, seriously. Yeah. And I thought, I have always had such questions about God, and I had a friend, a man who came alongside me, and I asked him all these questions, and he had great answers, but he didn't have all the answers, but I got into a dialogue with him, and it started to dawn on me that I had never heard any of this stuff. How did I get through a whole life going to church, ostensibly being raised Christian, but never having really good, deep questions answered? And I went to Yale University, and you're not going to get those questions answered at Yale University. It's a very secular place. But I thought everybody has the same questions, basically. You talk to people, and people have these questions. And the first book, I just decided I want to write a book that answers some of these basic questions. And I came up with the ridiculous title, Everything You Always Want to Know About God, But Were Afraid to Ask.
Well, the original in this series was Everything You Want to Know About Sex.
Well, see, because 40 years ago, sex was the taboo subject.
Yeah.
Now,
God's the taboo
you can't get away from it, but God really is the taboo subject.
Yeah.
And people have burning questions, and they're good questions, and they deserve answers. That's how I felt. So the first book was called Everything You Always Want to Know About God, But Were Afraid to Ask. The second book is called Everything Else You Always Wanted to Know About God, But Were Afraid to Ask.
You're on a roll, right,
And I
Eric?
still had, yeah, I'm still, and then I still had a lot of things that I wanted to write about. So I came up with this book, which is called Everything You Always Wanted to Know About God, But Were Afraid to Ask, the Jesus edition.
Now, the other two, are they also written in this Q&A style?
Yes, they are. It's
how do you feel writing and talking to yourself?
Well, I have many personalities living inside me.
I was going to say, yeah.
It's troubling, but I try to go with it. I try to use it for God's purposes. And I just wanted it to be, I really didn't mean to write it this way, but I started out just thinking of questions that I'd had and that everybody I know has these questions. And I said, well, let me just put these down. But it kind of, because I'm a creative writer, I've written a lot of different genres, it started to become a dialogue. And I said, well, let's just go with it. And I think that's what that has made the books pretty popular, is that people like the fact that you can dip in anywhere and just read a little bit and then put it down and read a little bit. It's not like you have to sit down and muscle through a chapter. You can just read a page or two, and it's sort of there's a lot of humor in it. Some folks know that I've been a writer for Veggie Tales. I like to use humor. I can't help myself. Even when I don't want to use humor, I use humor. It's just, I think it makes it fun to read. And if it's not fun to read, people won't read it.
Oh, no, absolutely. We could pick, as you say, we could just kind of launch it anywhere. But when you talk about Jesus, from your perspective, you came to faith, as you say, in 1988, which is, how old were you at that point?
I was 2.
Okay.
Actually, no. I was.
Very
It was just
profound.
around my. It was around my 25th birthday.
Around your 25th birthday. And you say you were raised in a Christian context.
Well, I mean, I was raised in the church. I was raised in a Greek Orthodox church, and I always thought of myself as a Christian. But the fact of the matter is, somehow, I would say mainly by going to Yale University, you get this idea that the ideas of faith, the ideas of the Bible, it's been, it's okay for the past, it's okay for childhood, it's okay for another time, but we've moved as a culture, we've moved beyond these parochial ideas.
So Jesus is sort of...
Well, I'm just saying that I had this idea that this stuff couldn't possibly be true. It's just too narrow, and the truth has to be something much larger. It couldn't be, Christianity, Orthodox Christianity. And so I drifted away from the faith, and it really wasn't until God rescued me around 1987, 88, and I was in a very bad place in life, very depressed, miserable, lost. I wanted to be a writer, and there's no path to being a writer. So I was just really unhappy. And if things weren't bad enough, I moved back in with my parents. And let me just say, don't ever do that.
No.
Yeah,
No.
don't move in with my parents,
Your
because they'll eat you alive.
Your parents would say amen to that,
They'll
probably.
yeah, well, let me tell you, they thought, my parents are, working class European immigrants, salt of the earth, delightful people, and they achieved the American dream that their son goes to an Ivy League university, and so here I am all lost, and I'm thinking, what's your problem? You should be making millions of dollars and supporting us. And so they didn't give me a lot of grace. And so in the midst of that misery, of course, I turned to God. I thought there's got to be an answer. I mean, I was really hungry for the truth, but I actually didn't believe there was such a thing as truth. I thought that, these are questions that don't have an answer. And I met a guy who started in a very gracious way to just come alongside me and answer all these questions that I had.
Now, when you say you grow up and the Christian thing becomes sort of what you did as a child, does this sort of relegate Jesus to Santa Claus status, Easter Bunny status?
I think, well, for some people, for me it was just, he was a mythic figure, he was a moral teacher, he was not God, he was not Lord. That's what I go into in this book, actually. In the first two books, and by the way, if folks go to my website, they can make more sense of this crazy thing. It's my name, ericmetaxas.com. Okay. Actually, my name is not ericmetaxas.com.
No.
My name is Eric Metaxas, but .com is
right.
the website.
Yes.
But they can get more information. But yeah, the first two books are more general, and I wrote them specifically for Christians to share their faith with friends, with people who are not necessarily hostile to faith, but who are just confused about it. But this one's more focused about Jesus.
Yeah, it really is, and it's very well done. Do you think people can be argued into faith?
That's a good question, and the answer is no.
Yeah.
I think that what happened I just go with my own experience. I couldn't be argued into the faith because I had all the answers against why it couldn't be true. So, two things. First of all, I think just because you cannot be argued into the faith doesn't mean that logic and reason are not very, very important. They are absolutely important, and I think part of what I try to do in these books is to show that the Bible and Christian faith are utterly reasonable. Anyone who says that's not true, they don't know what they're talking about.